Welcome to the Unit Economics Podcast. I'm Josh Stabinsky. On today's episode, I sit down with Kiki Couchman and Elan Halpern, the co-founders of Sourmilk, a probiotic-focused yogurt company based in New York. Sourmilk is built around a simple but differentiated premise. Take something that 92% of households already consume and engineer it to actually deliver measurable gut health impact. We get into how they formulated around specific probiotic strains rather than taste alone, what it looked like to source grass-fed dairy without any prior industry experience, and how they validated demand through a deliberately high-friction, self-distributed drop model before entering retail. We also talk about cold chain economics, early retailer relationships, geographic saturation as a growth strategy, fundraising discipline, and how they're thinking about building defensibility in a category dominated by large incumbents. I learned so much from Kiki and Elan, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Kiki and Elan, thank you both so much for taking the time to do this today. If you both wouldn't mind just starting with a brief background on yourselves and how you met to start, that would be great.
Sure, yeah. I'm Elan. That's Kiki. We met at undergrad. So Kiki and I went to Stanford together. We graduated in 2020. We actually met during a nutrition class that talked about the intersection of food and health systems. I was studying computer science. Kiki was studying human biology. So very different industries, but I had a strong passion for food and health. I'll share a little bit more about mine, and I'll let Kiki jump in on her story. But I was an athlete in college, so I was on the rowing team, and part of my experience on the rowing team was where I developed my Greek yogurt habit, which we'll talk about a little bit later with Sourmilk, but ended up eating Greek yogurt every single day because our coach would make Greek yogurt bowls for us after we got off the water every single morning. And that's kind of where the habit began and then really stuck. I went on to work at a super fast-growing technology company for 4.5 years. I was a product manager there. And we quit our jobs in January of 2025 to go full-time on Sourmilk and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, well, as one mentioned, our journeys crossed when we were at Stanford, but prior to that, I am from the Bay Area. So I grew up sort of north of San Francisco in Sonoma, so sort of wine country for most folks. And actually, my whole family is in agriculture. My dad grew up on a dairy farm in the Central Valley, so in a way, we joke that I'm a Nepo baby in like the worst way possible, maybe. But he actually moved on from dairy and ended up working in the wine industry. So growing up, all my summer jobs were in the vineyards on an ATV. And when I went to Stanford, I knew I wanted to study the intersection of health and human health and planetary health. So I ended up studying human biology and sort of had a focus on food and nutrition. Graduating in 2020, and naturally with a hum bio degree, I went and worked in private equity, as many people do. But really just, it was something that I loved and knew I wanted to get back to. But for my first job, to me, it was really important to sort of build the skills and follow a manager and mentor that I really believed in and could learn from. So I ended up staying there for 4.5 years and sort of helped grow our portfolio companies. I was on the portfolio operations side, so post-close after we invested in companies. And that brought me to New York. Spent my whole life in the Bay Area, so moving to New York was a big change and challenge for me, and have been here since. And we started this 1 year ago now.
Yeah, it's incredible to me knowing where you are now and having sort of followed the journey for the last several months that it's only been a year. I don't want to spoil anything. We'll get into it, but I'd love to reflect on what was going on leading up to actually launching the company. I'd love to hear more about the Greek yogurt habit that you had formed, Elan, if you don't mind speaking to that and walking listeners through the months, the weeks, the days leading up to actually launching the product and why specifically you decided this is worth quitting our jobs and going all in on.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think oftentimes when you hear people quit their jobs to start a food company, you think it's crazy and rash. I would say that Kiki and I put a lot of thought and kind of analysis into making this decision. So happy to share sort of our framework that we used around doing that. On the product side, why yogurt? We're yogurt fans. We love yogurt. I think we're way more obsessed with yogurt now than we were when we initially had this idea. So it didn't necessarily stem from the fact that we're obsessed with yogurt, but really from our interest and passion around health. So part of what we realized is I had a bunch of gut health issues after graduating college. It's pretty common, especially for women in their 20s, to go through, there's like whole hot girls have IBS, like to go through these sort of gut health issues. And in the process of sort of learning and understanding those things, it was chronic bloating, brain fog every single time after I woke up, inflammation, my hormones were all out of whack. It was like all of these downstream things. I sort of dove into the rabbit hole of the microbiome. So it kind of sprung me into this world of these 100 trillion bacteria that live in our gut and truly dictate how we feel every single day. Like 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. 2/3 of your immune system lives in your gut. So if you get sick really often, it's usually tied to some gut dysbiosis. And so while trying to figure out how I heal my own gut health issues, I was learning that probiotics are the best way to sort of get your gut back into balance. And oftentimes, the modern American diet and lifestyle really disrupt your microbiome and the good, healthy bacteria that tend to naturally be in there. And so I was like, okay, I need to start eating more probiotics. Like, where do I get probiotics? Obviously, you can buy them in pills and powders and supplement form. But I had developed this Greek yogurt habit every single day. And so I was consuming Greek yogurt every day. And what I thought was that this Greek yogurt that I was eating was actually doing something good for my gut. And it was probiotic. But when I dug into the science, I learned that basically all of the yogurt on the shelf isn't doing anything to support my microbiome in a positive way. And there's a couple reasons for that, which I'll kind of share quickly. Number one, it's the specific bacteria cultures that are used. So there are 40,000 different unique bacteria strains. Of those, a certain subset, like a few hundred, are considered probiotics, which means beneficial to the host. And the yogurt cultures that are used are yogurt cultures. They're specifically designed and bred to make really yummy tasting yogurt as quickly as possible. They're not necessarily the cultures that are designed to be really good for your gut and provide benefits like inflammation and digestion and healing your gut lining and all of these things. And so it wasn't that it's not a fermented food, it was just, it's not really a probiotic food. So what I started doing was making my own yogurt that had the right cultures in the right quantities, so that I can keep eating the thing that I wanted to eat every single day without having to change my habit and get that gut health benefit that my body needed. And that's really like a key important part of our like entire thesis with Sourmilk, is that there's a lot of amazing supplements that can have incredible benefits for your body, but most of them require you to change your habit, right? Whether it's a scoop of green powder in your water every morning, or like a scoop of coconut fat, or a pill, or whatever it is, those things aren't typically meeting customers or consumers where they are in their diets. And so we want to take this thing that 92% of American households are already consuming and have it be really good for them.
I'm curious what the very early days looked like. How did you go about formulation? How did you go about finding dairy suppliers? Like, where did you start to look? If I were to start, I say this all the time, I say this to most of my guests, like, if I were to go try to start a yogurt company, in this case, I would have no idea how to go source dairy. So I'm curious what that looked like and if that was intimidating or if you felt kind of unfazed by that.
Do you want to go, Kiki?
No, I was just about to say, this is all you, Elan. Elan's like full wheelhouse. It's what
Yeah.
she gets a random call and it's an Amish farmer, like 9 times out of 10, so
Yeah.
this is her.
We should probably spend an hour talking about Amish farmers and that looks like.
We could spend a long time talking about the dairy industry, that's for sure. But I mean, so it really our product is really simple. There's like ultimately 2 ingredients, which we're very grateful for, because as a high protein product, we're probably one of the only new ones that doesn't have any processed foods. It's like not an ultra processed food. It's a very simple food. We take specific cultures, in our case, these probiotic rich cultures, and we take high quality grass fed organic dairy. So when it comes to like formulating and sourcing, there's really like 2 variables you have to figure out. So what are your unique cultures that you're going to use, and what quantities are you going to use them? And then where are you getting your dairy from? When it came down to the cultures, like I said, our goal really wasn't necessarily to make like a yummy tasting yogurt. It was like, how do we create a probiotic supplement in yogurt form? And so a lot of our constraints around sourcing cultures came down to which ones are going to actually have efficacy on people's health as they consume it in a yogurt form. And so that was kind of that side of things. The dairy side of things is like, I mean, we literally knew nothing about this industry before. And so it started by just like Googling websites, talking to people on the phone, asking anyone in our network if they're related to dairy. It turns out like very few people we know have any connection to dairy spaces. So a lot of the strategy came from like finding an intro to someone, and then if that person couldn't do it, asking if they knew any more people who might be able to. And you just kind of keep following down that rabbit hole until someone says yes. And that's really like how we cobbled together both our dairy supply and our co-manufacturer as well, was just like calling people until someone said yes.
So once you had your first package of yogurt in hand that you were ready to sell, what did that process look like? How did you go about actually selling your first cup of yogurt?
We started selling from, I guess we can say it now, but we were selling a bit illegally from the beginning. We knew that we needed to build some sort of demand prior to ever having significant amounts of yogurt. This is not like, I know you've talked to Lucy with One Trick Pony. It's like they have a year-long shelf life. We have an 8-week shelf life. So the second we make any meaningful quantity and work with a co-manufacturer, we need to know that that product is going to land in people's hands the next day. And so the way that we did that was, we first tested, is there willingness to pay and what do people think of this product? And some of the best advice we got was don't just give out product, make people pay for it, and then you'll actually hear real feedback. So we were making it, we meaning Elan, was making it in her kitchen, again, not legally because of dairy licensing. They're subject to different cottage laws, or I guess not within the cottage laws. And we would drop on social media 15 jars a week. And we would have 15 customers who would come and they would pay for our yogurt, and we would hand deliver it to them and get real feedback on what they thought of the taste, the texture, all of the above. Once we actually had a product that we thought, okay, this is an amazing benchtop product. That's what you call it when it's not made at the factory scale. We brought it to our co-manufacturer, who we'd found through this process that Elan just named, which was like the rabbit hole of networking. And we actually scaled it up there, and we did our first run, which was 1,500 yogurts, and that was the minimum order quantity at the time. And again, what the hell are we about to do with 1,500 yogurts? We don't even have this in real packaging. We worked with our packaging supplier, and we didn't have final designs yet. It takes 12 weeks once you have final designs to get it into process. And so we had blanks, like they were truly just like blank white cups. So we ordered stickers and like 1,500 stickers, and we had these blanks, and we stayed up all night stickering them at the factory. We were on the factory line, and then we brought them down from where we are sort of up by Ithaca, upstate New York, to Long Island City, where we have a cold storage facility. We were able to negotiate a deal with the guy who has a cheese facility there. And we decided to sell them hand to hand. And so we were lucky that we'd already built a following on social media, and we already had collected emails, and we blasted everybody and said, hey, you're on our wait list. We finally now have yogurt. You can now purchase it online. And so we custom coded our Shopify website so that way you could actually buy, all the transaction happened online. It's almost like a drug deal, right? You buy it online, the payment goes through online, but then you don't actually transmit the drugs or the yogurt until you're in person. And so we did that. We custom coded with certain time slots, certain places all throughout New York City. And we had an automation where we sent them a calendar invite once they purchased the yogurt. And so they knew they had to be somewhere at a specific time. And then we automated reminders so that way they also remembered to get there at a certain time. And so that's how we sold through. We sold through 1,500 yogurts in the first week. It was 7 days. I think to be exact, it was 8 days, but we're calling it a week. And we did that 4 more times with our R&D runs. All of these were technically R&D runs, and every single one was hand stickered. And so we did that with 8,000 yogurts over the summer. And that was really a way of ensuring we had the demand. We could see the growth in terms of our customer base. We knew we really succeeded when, like, on our 3rd or 4th batch, we had people who were coming to us who had never seen us on social media, but whose friend had told them this was amazing. And so that's when you know you actually have real followers.
I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start. Before we get into the drug deal distribution model, which I do really want to get into, I'm curious what the earliest feedback looked like that you can recall that you actually implemented in your first few iterations of the product. Is there anything that sticks out?
Yeah, so when we first started doing these sort of like test products, we'd like order these tiny little yogurt jars off Amazon. They were glass jars. And we'd like put a piece of tape on it with like our name at the time, which was totally different from our name now, and hand them out to like friends. and friends of friends. And so I think we handed out like 50 jars. This was just free. And they were like little kind of 2-bite tasters. We gave all of them our phone numbers and said, text us with your feedback. Like, we're going to follow up with you once you've had it and text us what you think. And in that first initial batch, like the feedback was pretty consistent that they felt like the yogurt was like really sour. And the reason why the yogurt was really sour at the time is because, like I said, we were designing to be a really high CFU, super high dose probiotic. And that results in a slightly more sour yogurt because that bacteria is reproducing and creating lactic acid as it multiplies. And so that initial feedback we took and we sort of like reduced that fermentation a little bit so that it got back to a level that was like more palatable, more within the range of it. It's still like a tangy, yummy yogurt, but it's not overly sour where people are like wincing when they consume it. So a lot of our recipe iteration was less so around like kind of the cultures that we use or the milk. It was more so around like, how do we make sure that this remains to be a really high probiotic product and still tastes really good?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Let's talk about the drug deal method. God, I have so many questions. Okay. So, well, let's take a step back. Just again, for context, how long from deciding to go all in on the business to being ready to distribute your first batch of yogurt via drug deal did it take? Like, how long was that window?
The decision to go all in is different from when we actually did. When we actually did, it was January 1st, 2025. And when we did our first batch for the drug deal, it was basically June 1st, 2025. So 6 months.
Everything sort of happened in 6 months. It was like the idea happened in the spring of 2024. We then like quit our jobs like 6 months later. We then did our first production run 6 months later. And then we launched in our first grocery store 6 months after that first production run. So it all kind of happened in half year seconds.
That's very easy to keep track of. Thank you. Okay, so I guess at what point did you realize this is going to be how you were going to attempt to distribute the product? Had you had that idea in the back of your mind from the start? Did you think, oh, it's going to be easy to get into grocery stores to start? Because there are obvious advantages to this distribution methodology, right? You're creating a story, you're creating or promoting scarcity, you're getting direct customer feedback. And I'd love to talk about all the pros, but obviously your scale is really limited when you do something like this. And so I'm just curious to try to tease out like when you might have realized that's how you were going to have to distribute the yogurt. And if you were like, oh, this is great, this is exactly what we want to do. Or like, if you were like, what are we doing? This is not at all how I thought this was going to look.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that we thought about it was we actually wanted to solve a couple really specific problems. Number one is the traditional way to launch a perishable dairy product is by first going out and finding a cold chain distributor who can transport that product to the retailers, also signing on retailers and getting like POs and commitments around that, and also having final packaging, right? Like we needed to have all this stuff on it. So we knew that like that process would take months and months and months to actually do just to get the product into people's hands. So one of the problems we're trying to solve was like, how do we actually get this product that we know is ready, that we know, we have 2,000 people with a virtual line out the door who are excited to try it. Like, how do we just get it into their hands as quickly as possible? The clear answer is we do it ourselves, right? We don't wait to like sign a distributor and retailers and all of that. We just take it to them ourselves. So that was kind of number one. It was like speed. Number two is customer feedback. When you launch your product into retailers, you immediately lose connection with your customers. Like you don't own that relationship anymore. The retailer and grocery store owns that relationship with your customer. So as we're launching this product in our really early phases, having that direct connection with customers, literally handing out our phone numbers to every single customer we sold to, was invaluable in getting product feedback. Why do you like it? Why would you buy it again? What would you change? What have you had outside of this that you really like? Like all of that feedback came directly to us, as opposed to like not having any idea of how customers are engaging with the product through retail. And then number three is we knew that there was going to be a world of a difference if a customer sees a product in the grocery store for the first time and says, okay, like that's a new interesting product on the shelf, versus I met the founders of that company and I've been eating that yogurt all summer. So we knew that if we did it this way, if we met all of our customers face to face and had these regular drops and really got to share our story with them, it would be invaluable the moment we land on grocery store shelves, because now we've effectively planted all these evangelists and all of these like brand ambassadors who have met us and had that 5-minute exchange with us on the street corner in New York, who are advocates for our brand. And we saw that play out with our first grocery store launch. We just like flew off the shelves and way faster than any of us expected. So that was kind of the 3 reasons why we decided to do it this way.
I would add one other thing too, which is like, it's not that dissimilar from a farmer's market in the sense that we first started calling this a distributed farmer's market, and then we realized the drug deal model is just like a way better branding than a distributed farmer's market. But I do think it is all about branding and marketing. Like that is the thing that we have learned about all of this is like, do what you will, but if you can package it well and tell a story around it well, like it will blow up and it can be something that can pop your brand, and you need to take advantage of moments that will bring natural lift and attention to your brand. And so the real reason we didn't do a farmer's market is because it takes permitting. And by the time we were ready, it was June 1st and all the farmer's markets are booked out for the rest of the summer. And so our option was to create our own distribution, which was to set up our own little stand just outside the Equinox in the West Village. But what that did in turn was it created a different buzz, and we got to own our own playing field in a way that sitting at a farmer's market would not. You're one of many, and we are now one of one, and people walk by and are like, what the hell is that blue Hydro Flask backpack that girl's carrying? Is she slinging yogurt? That's insane. And then you generate buzz and people come and talk to you and ask about it. And it becomes, I mean, anybody in consumer knows like the scarcity thing is the biggest thing. Anything that feels exclusive, anything with a line in New York City is going to get attention. And so by nature of the fact that, this was an if you know type of thing, it generated more buzz than maybe we deserved for it.
It's a brilliant strategy, and clearly it's worked in hindsight, but it is brilliant in my opinion strategically. What did your repeat customer rates look like while you were primarily focused on the drug deal model? And how did you balance keeping repeat customers purchasing with also attempting to introduce new customers to the product, right? Because the demand is insatiable. And I think that strikes me as something that might be actually pretty difficult to balance, where you don't want to like deter or push away existing customers, but you do need to try to figure out how to cater to and prioritize new customers to get them in the funnel as well. How did you go about balancing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually doubled our production size with every drop. So the way we released these drops was like, it was like New York drop number 1. Drop number 1 sold out in like 7 days. Drop number 2, we like doubled the inventory. And so it lasted us a little bit longer and enabled us to like not say no to new people. And then drop number 3 was like higher than drop number 2. So we didn't usually, there of course there were times where we were like, sorry guys, we're sold out. And pretty much at the end of every single drop, we were entirely sold out. But that allowed us to both like meet the repeat customers and kind of open new doors or open new customers.
I would also say like generally our repeat rate was about 30%, and like that is incredibly high for an incredibly high friction model. So another thing that we would always balance is like this customer retention metric is actually quite bad data. Like the quality is bad because if you think about how we went about doing this, every Friday, Elan and I would look at our schedules for the next week, and we would block off random 1-hour chunks throughout the week and think about random locations in the city that we wanted to be. And that was going to be the schedule for the week. And if you couldn't make that, so be it. You're not getting yogurt. And so that's also a big part of this was we made people come to us. And actually that has helped us in leveraging this data to retail, because we can say this was the most high friction process ever. And we still were able to sell this much with a 30% customer retention rate. And like now just going to be at their local grocery store, we will see much higher velocities than that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, yeah, it is a flawed measurement technique, but you don't have access, unless you're a D2C company, right? You don't really have access to repeat customer rates if you're just entirely sold in a grocery store. And as a yogurt company that's reliant on the cold chain that has products that expire relatively quickly, you can't really sell D2C in the same way. So like it did also enable measurement in a way from the start too. And I think that's also like a pretty interesting, I don't know, it's an interesting part of the story where like, yeah, it was a flawed methodology and obviously the numbers are like really impressive, but it's also just like fascinating to me that you were even able to measure that to start.
I think we had a real benefit, and I think a really smart thing that we did, which saved ourselves time, but was doing this all through Shopify. It literally sounds like I'm being paid by Shopify right now, but it's not at all.
We'll tag Shopify as
Literally.
much as we possibly can.
Please do pay us, actually. But in the sense that we were able to get customer data. Like, I think that's the other thing that's like, it's not just that I have a track of sales. It's that they had to fill out their data online themselves, not me like turning over the thing and asking for a tip, right? And like having them fill out their email if they want. This was actually all online and on their own time that they purchased the product. And then we just came and did the actual handoff of the product. And so that made capturing this data so much better because it looked like a D2C. Like you can go on our Shopify and for those 3 months, like it looks like we were transacting as if we had an online storefront. And then we were also able to collect our zip codes, which has been very helpful as well.
Before we get into the more current state of affairs and what it's looked like to get into grocery stores and to expand, I'm curious what you noticed around why people were buying the product. How much was due to, in your opinion, if you can, it's probably impossible to quantify, but to whatever degree you can tell or you could tell at the time, how much of the demand do you think was driven by hype and brand and this sort of, I don't know, fun purchasing experience, the novelty of it, versus taste, versus the protein, the macro ratio, versus the probiotic and the health benefit? Like, do you have clear signal on what people were indexing on at that point in time?
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple of major factors as to why people bought it again. Number one was because of how it made them feel. So a lot of people came to try Sourmilk because they knew we were a higher probiotic yogurt and maybe they were facing gut health issues like bloating or irregular bowel movements or whatever that was. And so a lot of people that would come meet us every single week were like, this is helping me be regular every day, or I feel less bloated, or I feel less inflamed. So that was kind of a key driver, which was really exciting for us actually, because like obviously we had this thesis of like we can create this product that both tastes good and is incredibly beneficial for your health. But to see it play out in like total strangers was really rewarding. The second reason I think is like flavor and texture. That's really more like product specific. So texture wise, we obviously tried every single possible yogurt we could get our hands on in the process of doing this. And one of the things we realized, especially when it comes to Greek yogurt, is that they can often be overly thick to the point where they're almost like dry and cloying. And we didn't want that in our product. We wanted this sort of like more silky, smooth, easy to eat. Like there's so many memes online about people forcing themselves to finish their yogurt bowl. Like we did not want that. We wanted people to like truly enjoy every single bite that they had of Sourmilk. And so texture was part of the thing we wanted to focus on. And then flavor, I would say, was like almost like a pleasant surprise in some ways, because we sort of sought to design this as a probiotic. Within those constraints, we were trying to figure out how to make it taste good. Had we thought to design like the best yogurt, I think the product would have came out very differently. Like we would have tried to match whatever best yogurt that we saw on the shelf. We didn't even like care about the flavor that they were going for. We were like, we needed to have these cultures in it. And then like, how do we tweak it to make it taste good within that? Because of the unique cultures that we use, and it's not found in any other yogurt on the shelf, it actually has a slightly different flavor than other yogurts will have. And we're seeing a lot of customers come back to us week over week because they're like, this is the best yogurt I've ever had in my life. It's often described more as like, if you've ever had a homemade yogurt, or if your like grandparents from your home country make yogurt, it usually tastes a lot more like that than it does like a traditional factory made yogurt.
The one other thing that I'll say here is we ran our own gut health study. Something we always get asked is like, how long until we notice a difference? Like you say this is probiotic, you say this is better for your gut. Does it take 2 days? Does it take 3 days? Does it take a week? And of course, the answer is it depends, but we wanted to have a better answer than that. And so we basically solicited, I mean, we would have loved to have done a clinical study, but we don't have the funds or the time to do that. And so we decided to do our own and do as much as we could, design a study that was sort of, to some extent, foolproof. And it was 2 weeks. And we solicited all of our followers, email, or everybody on our list. And we ended up having...
We were asking for 20 participants. It was a 17-day like intervention study. And we had 200 applications. We ended up moving forward with like 60 people.
Yeah. And we basically tracked every day we had like baseline survey for the first 3 days. And then every day we tracked for 14 days sort of how they were feeling and made sure that they ate like a portion controlled amount of yogurt. And it was the first thing that they ate every single morning. And so we did a whole Elan spent lots of time on that data set.
Did they just do this willingly? Did you have to pay people, or were they just excited to support the brand?
They were just excited, ultimately.
They were excited. I mean, it was free yogurt for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
People were super excited about getting free yogurt. And so that was a huge incentive for many people.
Yeah. And so then, we were able to crunch the numbers and actually see it made a meaningful difference on bloating, on stool quality, frequency, all of those things. And we also measured mood and, brain fog, a lot of different factors that gut health actually can play a role in. But now we can sort of say hey, we had this study. It wasn't N of 500, but it was 60.
And it took 7 days.
Oh, sorry.
It was 7 days was when we saw over 60% of people saw meaningful differences in their typical gut health symptoms.
But the other thing that we really think about is it's most important that you just feel different eating the product. And so as much as we can say it takes 7 days, all these people felt these differences, unless you actually feel different, we know it doesn't actually matter. So the N of 1 is the most important thing we think about. And so actually hearing about people's experiences and sharing that with other folks is probably the most effective thing that we can do.
Okay, so we've now spent 34 minutes talking about distribution, which is a lot more than I was expecting, which I would be happy to talk about distribution for the entirety of this episode. But I really want to hear about how things are going today. You just recently, as of late 2025, started distributing the product in grocery stores. How did you go about selecting your first grocery store? Has there been a lot of unforeseen friction in trying to distribute through traditional channels? Just what has that process looked like? Anything you can share? Yeah, any learnings, any surprises?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a lot we can unpack on this. One thing I'll note is that with the drug deal model that we did, obviously we had all these positive benefits and it was great and we would do it again in a heartbeat, but it was a lot of manual labor. Kiki and I were biking upwards of 5 to 10 miles a day with 50 pounds of yogurt on our back every single day. We each lost 5 pounds. All of our friends were can I come work for you? I want to, it was a lot. And so, moving into retail, and especially now we're starting to work with distributors, there's a big plus there where our bodies are less at stake in terms of actually getting this yogurt from A to B. We wanted to be really thoughtful about who our initial launch partner was when we were entering retail, because we had built up all this hype and all this demand, and we had thousands of customers who had tried our product. So we knew that whoever we first launched with, we would drive traffic to that store. We ended up launching with Happier Grocery down in Soho. We think that they do an incredible job of highlighting and showcasing new to market brands. They're very supportive. They're a great resource. We love their kind of aesthetic and ethos around sourcing products. And so our initial launch was with them, and I would say it's pretty simple. We got a warm introduction from our friends at Apollo Bagels, which was really helpful. And they were you guys got to stock Sourmilk. And that was it. We launched with them from there. The next week, we launched with a local, at Living Greenpoints, we launched with a local store here called Jubilee Marketplace, which is the Greenpoint, now maybe Brooklyn Sweetheart grocery store. And they're also incredible partners. And so our first couple rollouts were really decisive about who we wanted to partner with and release the product to.
We have still been self-distributing to these grocery stores at this point. So about 50-50 right now goes through a distributor and the others go through us. And it is annoying. It's the same thing as the drug deal model. It's annoying. We have to spend a full day in the car. We have to be going to all the Upper East Side, over to the Upper West Side, over down to Midtown, to Tribeca, and it's a pain in the ass. And we have been able to develop relationships with our retailers and buyers in a way that I think has proved to be incredibly helpful, especially right now in the early days. I think, to give an example, right now we are out of stock because of scheduling issues with our manufacturer. And this happens to a lot of folks when they're growing. There's going to be growing pains with co-man, so you don't have full control over the production line. And for us to have built this relationship and sweat equity, honestly, with our retailers has meant that they've been incredibly understanding of where we are right now in the business and this gap in sales for the next week. And so If it was just with the distributor, we're in a different situation where we actually don't know our retailer in the same way and they don't have a face to the brand. And so it's a lot easier for them just to kick us off the shelf than to actually have grace and understanding that we're a growing brand and we're going to hit some road bumps.
I'm curious to know what it would take to, from this point on, scale more rapidly. And I heard you interviewed on a different show talk about your desire to sort of like burn bright within a smaller geo first, which makes sense to me. That seems like a really smart, deliberate strategy. But obviously, the goal is to distribute the product nationwide. So, how do you think about growing deliberately, and what would ultimately unlock scale from here on out?
Yeah, I think partnering with a distributor that can help us launch regionally and then nationally will be really beneficial. So that's like one is like, hey, like, who's gonna take the product? Obviously, Kiki and I can take it like to the Upper West Side and to Soho, but like taking it all the way to Southern California is a really different story. And then ensuring our supply chain is ironed out, and our manufacturing is ironed out. We're still learning a lot. Like we had no experience in the dairy space before. We're still learning a ton about how the industry works and where the most cost-effective, high-quality milk we can get is. All of that, I think, will be a learning process as we grow and scale and take the brand nationally.
But I would say on the actual marketing front, per that comment of like, let's go like inch wide, mile deep, I think it still pertains. I'm not trying to be in Erewhon and Central Market and I don't know, Publix tomorrow, because even if that demand might be there, like it does not change that we are in a category set that is compared to Chobani, Fage, and Siggy's, which are huge incumbent brands. And it does not change that we have an 8-week shelf life. And so I don't really care. Like if there's demand there, I need to feel confident that we are going to sell through, because even when we do, if and when we do raise money, it's not a good business model to just hope and pray that you don't get charged back and you don't have to pay for this spoiled product back. And so the way we think about it is like, we're not going to stay in New York always, but we're going to saturate New York before we go to Long Island, Connecticut, New Jersey. And then we're going to saturate those areas before we go to Philadelphia, Boston, everywhere else in the Northeast, before we then look to the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, et cetera. And I think it just goes back to like the initial thing of, I think there's a like rule of 7 marketing where you have to see something 7 times in order to actually click buy or go to the grocery store and buy it. I want that to be the case in all these places. I mean, I think it's very rare that a grocery store item ever follows those principles. And so I think we have a real advantage by, even if we're not perfect on that rule of 7, we can come close to it. In addition to the idea that your friend as an influencer is the best influencer out there. And so expanding into a neighboring county is much more beneficial to get people to try it than expanding into a county over in California.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I know obviously you're taking things slow, you're being methodical, but as you think about scaling, what do you think the most defensible aspect of the business you're building is? What do you feel like your moat is as you grow?
I think it is the gut health thing. Like that is the number one. If I look at Coconut Cult, they just launched in Target. Like they have shown that there are folks who are willing to buy this product and who understand that the yogurt on the shelf that they're eating right now is doing nothing for their gut. So they're buying this product that is the equivalent of a probiotic supplement in the coconut goop form, and they're putting it on their yogurt. And so I think we're only seeing that market expand. I think we get the benefit and the tailwind that the Greek yogurt market is expanding naturally because of the increase of GLP-1s. People are looking for higher, less processed protein sources. They want less sugar in their yogurt. They're returning to the outer aisles. But that's not our defensible mode. I think our defensible mode is the fact that we can put the thing that can heal your gut in the thing you're eating every single day. And then the secondary differentiator of Sourmilk is the fact that Chobani was really the one that disrupted the Greek yogurt aisle and brought it 10 years ago. Sort of a recent aisle that's been disrupted. This is not like a Graza, right? Or like a Fishwife or something like that. Like those aisles have like basically never been disrupted. But since Chobani came, every yogurt has honestly only been slightly iterative on that model. And I feel like I can confidently say that Sourmilk is bringing a totally different energy to the dairy aisle. Even Good Culture, it's a cool, fun brand, but where is the direct communication from company to, existing customers, to new customers? Where's the fun, young energy that some of these other brands that you'll see, like Graza, like Fishwife, like Poppy, bringing to those aisles? So I don't know that that's a defensible moat, but it's definitely a different approach than other yogurts.
I'm curious if there are any brands outside of the dairy space that you look to for inspiration, and if so, why you're inspired by them.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot for like various reasons. Kiki said this, mentioned this. I'm sure Graza gets mentioned a lot on all CPG podcasts, but I think the reason why we like look to them is because we've talked a lot about how right now it's pretty easy for us to maintain this like authentic brand identity. Like it's really us kind of speaking about the brand and putting our faces out there, and people kind of associate Sour Milk with us. But like once we launch as a national brand, part of our like fear is losing that authentic relationship that we have with our customers and with new customers. And all of a sudden it's this like black box of like this wrapped product that you buy at the grocery stores. I think the vast majority of CPG brands are that. They're just like, there's no kind of personal connection. There's no like authenticity. It's just like a brand. And very few have been able to maintain that level of authenticity at scale. I think Graza does a really good job at that. Like if you go to their Instagram, it's like very silly and very fun and very playful, and still feels like there's a personality here. It's not just like another brand on the shelf.
Yeah, I think something else that actually, Elan wrote a whole LinkedIn post on this about our packaging. And another thing we really think about are brands that are very transparent in the ingredients that they put into their product. So for us, we want to be incredibly transparent about what the bacteria does for you. I can tell you that I can flip over a probiotic package and it says all the different bacteria. I have no idea what that bacteria does for me. One product that we saw this on was Native, which is the shampoo, conditioner, like personal hygiene brand. And they list the ingredients on the back and it says exactly what they are and what they do for the product. And that was something that we really wanted to incorporate in our packaging. And so you'll see the same thing on our packaging is, pasteurized organic whole milk. Why is that important? Why do we choose that, right? Where does that come from? Secondarily, like these yogurt cultures, what do? They make good tasting yogurt. And that's what you'll see on all these other yogurts on the shelf. And then these probiotics, that's what you won't see on all these other yogurts on the shelf. And this is what they do for your body. So that was also something that we kept in mind.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Both are great answers. I feel like everybody mentions Graza, and for good reason, but Native hasn't been mentioned. I think they're both great answers. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about fundraising in general. You're a bootstrapped company to date, and you alluded to the topic a little bit earlier in the conversation. It seems like you've been very deliberate in not raising funds at this point. Can you talk to me a little bit about the framework through which you're thinking about raising capital, what an injection of capital would do for the business, I guess, but why you've been reluctant to raise thus far? Because I have to imagine there are tons of VCs, tons of firms, tons of groups out there that would love to pour money into what you're building. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it does seem like you've been reluctant to do so.
Yeah, not a humble brag, but we meet with 3 a week.
Yeah. We do take a lot of VC calls. I think part of how we thought about it was especially coming from our world, being Stanford and the entrepreneurship that it breeds. There's a lot of vanity in raising capital in VC funding of I'm starting a company and this is how much money I raised. And we wanted to steer clear of that. The real question is what's the point of the money, right? What do you need it for? If we were starting an AI, VC-backed tech company, we would need to raise money so that we can hire expensive engineers. There's a very tangible cost to starting a technology software company, and that is engineering cost. In our case, our job is to make a product and sell it for higher than the cost that it took for us to make it. And so how we kind of thought about it was we'd been working for 4.5 years, and we basically put aside savings to cover our rent. Rent at our age is the number one most highest cost. And so as long as we can cover our rent for the next 2 years, all of the profits that we get from selling yogurt will just go straight into the next production run. And obviously at some point we have to start paying ourselves. Like, this is going to be our livelihood, in which case, like, we will eventually raise money and do all of those things. But this allows us to actually truly test if this thing has legs before we pour fuel on the fire. And so the way we see like external capital is a means for helping us grow quicker and more efficiently, and giving us the ability to do things that maybe we wouldn't otherwise be able to do without capital. But to get the product off the ground and prove that it has product market fit and prove that enough people will buy it, we didn't want to introduce any external capital or any external people in figuring that out. We will raise at some point, just to be clear. Like, in our industry, it's a little bit inevitable. It's very capital intensive, especially with cold chain and perishable products. There's a lot going on there. So at some point we will. It just, for now, like, we kind of set ourselves up so we didn't have to for the first 2 years.
Yeah, makes sense.
I also think it's important in fundraising to tell a good story. Like, you want to create, of course, we have like an interesting story that just happened, but per what Elan just said, like, why do you need the money? I think, we don't have a national launch lined up yet. Like, that is not what we have in store, and that's not what's on the immediate horizon. And I think when and if we do, like, that is a great story as to why we need that money, both externally, but also for us. Like, right now, the only reason we would need money, I mean, there are some reasons to fund things, of course, like our production runs and all of that, but we aren't running our own facility. We're able to make it on a unit economic basis. This makes sense. We have to have margin, like whatever that looks like. And so because we have the flexibility not to pay ourselves for 2 years, it also gives us that flexibility. And then one other thing about the benefit of not raising money, I think there's the obvious benefit if you own more of your company, but the secondary benefit is that you are so disciplined in your decision making, and that has proved to be so helpful for Elan and myself, especially in these early days. There's so many things that I would have said yes to if we had money, because it's a couple thousand here, it's a couple thousand here, it's not a huge deal. But we just got off the call actually with someone who, clearly has a valuable service, but it is not going to make a step function change in our business right now. It will in 6 months, but not right now. So even though I'm only paying like $30 for it, there's no value. It's not $30 worth of value. And so we have had to become hyper focused on what's important and what actually makes a difference. And I actually think that's a really useful skill. As founders, you make decisions like 500 times a day, and to be able to be discerning about what is actually valuable, I think is an important thing.
Where do you see things, let's say 3 to 5 years from now for the company?
I mean, I see us nationally distributed. Like, you can buy us anywhere. I think the question, honestly, between 3 and 5 is like, will we be only a natural channel nationally, or will we be at a place that we will be mass market as well? And I actually think that like truly is the difference between 3 and 5 years from now.
Very precise.
So yeah, so somewhere in the middle there. Yeah.
I mean, I'll also add, I think we are super excited about exploring other products. Our whole mission and premise is in the space of gut health and creating things that are truly good for your gut that are still also like real whole foods. And so I think we're excited to start exploring other product sets within our area.
Amazing. I think we have time for one more question. What's something that you've changed your mind about, both of you? You could have the same answer, but both of you, since starting Sourmilk.
Content creators, influencers. I mean, that is now a lot of my identity is going online. And prior, I think in an elitist way, I held a belief that influencers both sort of sell themselves out, but then also it's an easy thing that you can just do passively. And it's super hard. It is super hard. And I think we can sort of all acknowledge that it's hard, but until you're actually in it, doing it, you don't understand truly like the level of work and precision and like care that you have to have, and like ownership over your own voice and extreme editing abilities, honestly, to edit out anything that's not hyper valuable. So I've completely changed my mind. And I actually think the influencer economy should be much bigger than what it is. Like, I think about how much money is poured into it, and everyone's like, what? They got paid this many thousands of dollars for this video. Actually, it's probably worth more. And actually, it's probably a much better use of my dollars than going to a billboard or another random ad or paid media on a podcast for an advertisement.
We unfortunately didn't have the time to get into your digital strategy, your social strategy. I think you're doing a phenomenal job with the content that you're putting out there. Did you have any imposter syndrome when you first started putting yourself out there like that?
Oh, totally. I mean, Elan and I went through the exercise of making videos and sending it back and forth to each other to give feedback. And it's brutal. It's totally brutal to have to hear and watch yourself time and time again. And so definitely, I mean, you had to get over the cringe of it. And again, it's my own elitist bias against it. But God, I can't believe I went to Stanford and worked in private equity. Here I am an influencer right now. And so maybe less imposter syndrome, but more my own self-belief and identity.
Elan, how about you?
So many things. I think maybe one of the biggest ones is around just marketing and brand. The name Sourmilk at first can seem very deterring, right? And there was a bit of fear that we had around deciding to name the company Sourmilk. It is by far one of the best decisions we've made ever about the business and the brand. It is a scroll stopping name, both literally on social media and, as you're walking down the grocery aisle and you stop and you pick something up because it has that crazy name. Liquid Death kind of paved the way for this. And I was pretty hesitant on doing something that is a little bit more out there, but it's been by far one of the best things that we've done.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to do this today. I learned so much. If you want to share with listeners where they can find Sourmilk, please feel free to do so.
You can find Sourmilk on social media at Get Sourmilk. You can also find some more sort of insights on what I share on our founder-led page at Couchwoman. And then you can buy us in stores in local retailers in New York City. I won't name all of them, but just a few: Happier Grocery, Butterfield, Union Market, Brooklyn Fair, Lincoln Market, Jubilee.
Incredible. Thank you both so much. I'm so excited to follow along.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can stay up to date with the latest episodes. Thanks for listening.